While others set sail to find One Piece, Kaido set sail to find a good place to drink. The grand line remains the same, only the enemy's bad luck has skyrocketed. Kaido appears, not to train, not to talk, but to teach the world how to lie down properly, while the enemy is still buffing their stats. Kaido has already finished fighting and is back to drink more. Yonko, Marine, Celestial Dragons. Sounds familiar, but let's fight together quickly. This isn't a journey to become stronger, but a journey where Kaido makes others weaker. The ultimate challenge begins with us. Awesome and entertaining. You'll be hooked. Wano Country, Onigashima. The newly born Kaido slowly opened his eyes, but at this moment, the Beast Kaido was no longer the Beast Kaido he once was. Beast Kaido muttered to himself, "That was really dangerous just now. It's a good thing I used the purification jutsu on my left eye in time, otherwise it would have been a disaster." Originally, he had transmigrated from Earth to the Hokage world, becoming a member of the Uchiha clan. Finally, during the clan's extermination, he successfully awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, escaping his fate of being killed. Perhaps because of his transmigration, he had awakened one incredibly terrifying jutsu, another indescribable jutsu that could break boundaries. It is said that the awakening of the Mangekyo Sharingan is based on the user's innermost thoughts. Therefore, having mastered the purification eye technique in his left eye and the light eye technique in his right eye, the cooldown times for these two eye techniques are 50 years for the left eye and 1,000 years for the right, respectively, but their effects are incredibly terrifying. The reason he was forced to use the light eye technique prematurely was because he was manipulated by Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Obito to cunning old men and secretly poisoned by Black Zetsu, preventing him from using his left eye. However, the time force in his right eye is not subject to any external restrictions and can forcibly break through any limitations at any time, sending the user to their grave. Later, he was transported by the time force to Wano Country in the pirate world. After arriving in Wano, his physical body was cleansed by the time force and shattered, transforming into a soul, or rather, a soul on the verge of collapse. The reason is that the eye techniques were too powerful, and his physical strength was still insufficient. Knowing that his soul body couldn't last much longer, he had no choice but to use the purification eye technique on his left eye. The terrifying aspect of the purification eye technique is that it can transform everything of those below the 6 paths level of combat power for his own use. As a result, he became a soul body and had no choice but to descend upon Wano Country. The strongest person in Wano Country was Kaido of the 100 Beasts. Thus, Kaido of the 100 Beasts naturally became the target of purification. Therefore, everything about Kaido of the 100 Beasts became his. After purification, most of his appearance remained that of Kaido, making things more convenient for him, except that his body shrunk slightly. The new Kaido closed his eyes and then opened them again, his eyes transforming into 3 Tamo Sharingan that spun rapidly, and a second later, they transformed into Mangekyo Sharingan. Laughing, he said, "My Mangekyo Sharingan isn't blind either. It's truly miraculous. This body itself possesses immense life force. Unfortunately, the cooldown time for my right eye Sharingan is 1,000 years before I can use it again. Even if I can't use the Sharingan, Susanoo is still usable." After saying that, a layer of Susanoo armor appeared around Kaido's body. Besides, I'm now taking on the appearance of Kaido, who's close to the 100 Beasts, but that's good. It saves a lot of unnecessary trouble. Moreover, my Mangekyo Sharingan is vaguely showing signs of impending evolution, as if it's about to break through the barrier and evolve into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. And who knows, maybe in the future, relying on this immense life force, I can evolve into the Rinnegan. However, the Rinnegan requires an enormous amount of life force, and this is a pirate world, so I don't know if the evolution will be successful. Kaido closed his Mangekyo Sharingan and stood up, sensing the Haki and mythical Zoan Azure Dragon form within him. It was indeed a purify eye technique. Even the side effects of the devil fruit had been completely eliminated, leaving him utterly clean at this moment. The leader of the Beast Pirates' three calamities, Flame King, rushed in from outside, urgently asking, "Mr. Kaido, what was that Shoku Haki you just unleashed? And Mr. Kaido, what's wrong with you? What happened?" "It's you, King," Kaido replied slowly. Kaido knew exactly why Flame King had rushed over. It was because Kaido, the original Beast Pirates Kaido, had desperately unleashed his Shoku Haki before his death. When Flame Ear King saw Mr. Kaido again, his appearance had changed, as if he had reverted to his physique from over 20 years ago. He was no longer as robust as before, but rather somewhat thinner with 8-pack ABS, and his height had also decreased slightly. Was this really Mr. Kaido? If it weren't for the fact that his face still bore more than 90% resemblance to Mr. Kaido, and his voice and aura were the same, Flame Ear King would immediately suspect that Mr. Kaido was being impersonated. Flame Ear King couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Kaido, what happened to you in this state?" "I'm still me, King. You don't need to worry." Kaido lifted his spiked club, which was about the same height as his current form, and said, "Order them to make me another suitable spiked club." "Yes, Mr. Kaido." Although King had doubts in his heart, he still respectfully replied. Kaido began to swell up, eventually transforming into his mythical Zoan form, the Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon, hundreds of meters long, flew towards Onigashima. Seeing this, King shook his head with a wry smile, saying, "What was I doubting just now?" Besides Mr. Kaido, no one in this world can transform into the form of an Azure Dragon. If it was Mr. Kaido, King felt relieved and went to the factory to order the creation of a brand new spiked club weapon that Mr. Kaido needed. The Azure Dragon Kaido, flying out of Wano, plunged into the sea, then flew out again, saying, "The so-called side effects of devil fruit abilities are completely ineffective against me." After all, Kaido, the Beast King, has been completely transformed by me for my own use, including his devil fruit abilities. As long as the Mangekyo Sharingan can be used, there's no problem. Now that there's no risk of blindness, that's when I can really put in the most effort. Kaido dared to gamble, waiting until he fully adapted to this body before using the power of the Azure Dragon Isasusanu. That way, his fighting power could increase by at least half of its base strength. Half a day later, Kaido returned to Wano on Onigashima. Kaido knew the current time. It was the year 1519 and the year 1520. The year the plot began was also the year the Geppu entered the Sea Garden. Kaido knew that Wano, while seemingly calm on the surface, harbored deadly dangers internally. It was best to eliminate these hidden threats now, lest they erupt completely 2 years later, as in the original story. Currently, the main force of the Beast Pirates consists of the 3 calamities, Flying 5, Number 1, Headliners, and the Rich Man. At this moment, the Emperor appeared beside Kaido, curiously asking, "Governor Kaido, you seem to have changed a lot. Go inform the 3 calamities and Flying 5 to come to a meeting." Kaido ignored Bao Huang's questioning and directly gave orders. As Kaido's secretary, Bao Huang immediately respectfully replied, "Yes, Governor Kaido." A short while later, the 3 calamities, Flame Calamity King, Queen, Jack, Flying 5, Who's Who, Shikamaru, Black Maria, Junji, and Page 18 people in total entered the Onigashima meeting room. They didn't know why Governor Kaido had suddenly summoned them to the meeting, but when they saw Kaido's completely new appearance, they all showed shocked expressions. Black Maria, in particular, couldn't help but curiously ask, "Lord Kaido, what's wrong?" Black Maria, who was relatively familiar with Lord Kaido's appearance, was the most surprised. Just a few days ago, he hadn't looked like this. Others, similarly curious, looked towards Governor Kaido. King Yantai stepped forward to explain the general reasons on behalf of Governor Kaido. Queen laughed heartily, saying, "Ha ha ha, what does that matter? As long as it's still Lord Kaido, that's all that matters, and I'm so envious that Lord Kaido has regained his youth." Speaking of regaining youth, Black Maria and Genti's eyes instantly lit up. As women, they feared the day they would grow old and lose their current charm. However, the crowd didn't continue to be curious about why Lord Kaido's body had shrunk and become younger. What they cared about was why Lord Kaido had urgently convened the meeting. Kaido glanced at his 8 strongest subordinates and said, "Our beast pirates have been stationed in Wano for so many years, and Wano has hidden dangers that haven't been completely eradicated. However, I intend to use half a month to completely wipe out these hidden dangers in Wano." This Lord Kaido, Wano. Queen was about to explain the difficulties, but the samurai were as slippery as an eel, and Lord Kaido interrupted him with a wave of his hand. Kaido continued, "Prince, I have you prepare the documents and distribute them to each of them." "Yes, Lord Kaido." Prince, standing beside him, handed the documents that Lord Kaido had asked him to prepare to everyone present. This document contained information based on Kaido's impression of the original work, describing the remnants of the samurai hidden in Wano. King Flame, wearing a mask to conceal his extremely grim expression, said, "What audacity! To have hidden himself under our noses for so many years. Lord Kaido, this is our negligence." King Flame proactively admitted his failure, stating that Lord Kaido shouldn't have needed to personally intervene. Now that Lord Kaido had intervened, wasn't that a clear indication of their negligence? The others were equally embarrassed, because Lord Kaido himself had investigated the matter. Wasn't this indirectly accusing them, his subordinates, of being incompetent? Kaido continued, "After we've dealt with all these potential threats, we'll take action against Kurozumi Orochi. After all, let this incompetent fellow cause chaos and destruction throughout Wano. Lord Kaido, with such a large-scale operation this time, won't it cause a backlash from Wano?" Who's Who voiced his anxieties. Jack the Drought loudly retorted, "Who's Who, are you questioning Lord Kaido's decision? As long as it's Lord Kaido's decision, we'll unconditionally accept it. Jack, do you want to fight?" Who's Who's eyes instantly turned cold. He feared Lord Kaido, but that didn't mean he feared Jack the Drought. The Flame King warned, "Stop making noise. Do you want to make fun of Mr. Kaido?" Following the Flame King's warning, Jack the Drought and Who's Who both suppressed their anger. After all, the Flame King was right. Lord Kaido was still here. If they provoked his wrath, they really wouldn't be able to handle it. Black Maria whispered softly, "I feel that our Lord Kaido's mood swings are much more stable than before, much calmer." Black Maria's analysis wasn't wrong, because the Beast Kaido now is no longer the Beast Kaido of the past. Kaido looked at the Flame King and said, "King, you lead this mission. Resolve this matter as quickly as possible." "Yes, Mr. Kaido, I guarantee I will complete the mission," the Flame King respectfully replied. After the Flame King, Queen, Jack, Who's Who, Shikoku, Gento, and Page 1 left, Black Maria chose to stay. Black Maria familiarly walked up behind Lord Kaido, hugged him, and happily said, "Lord Kaido, after your body became 2 meters tall, I'm a little unaccustomed to hugging you. But you are still the Lord Kaido I admire most. Also, Lord Kaido, could you tell me how you regained your youth?" What Black Maria wanted most right now was to know how Lord Kaido had recovered his youth. "That depends on your performance, Maria," Kaido said with a slight smile. Black Maria immediately understood Lord Kaido's meaning. Wano Country Curry, along with King Inferno and Jack the Drought, arrived at this place. Tama, who was playing alone, was directly confronted by King Inferno and Jack. It was clear that Tama recognized the 2 men, and the fear on his face grew increasingly apparent. Jack the Drought looked at little Tama and said, "This little girl is the one Lord Kaido is looking for. Isn't she, King?" "Yes, that's her," King Inferno replied calmly, his arms crossed. Tama was instantly stunned. Why would the monstrous Beast Kaido specifically target him? Tama couldn't remember anything about him that would warrant Kaido's attention. King Inflamed Ear walked over, lifted little Tama up with one hand, and said, "Don't worry, Mr. Kaido thinks highly of you. He'll help you fulfill even the simplest conditions. This is what Mr. Kaido asked me to tell you." Tama was stunned, almost unable to react, and wondered if she had misheard. Kaido of the 100 Beasts valued her. What did that mean? She was just a weak little girl. King Inflamed Ear and Jack, along with Tama, continued forward. When they saw a dilapidated but still vaguely populated small village, Jack said, "This is Amigasa Village." Tama mustered the courage to ask, "What are you doing here in Amigasa Village?" "Little brat, don't ask, King Inflamed Ear warned coldly. Tama was so frightened by Jack's fierce face that she almost cried, her eyes reddening. The Flame Ear King looked around Amigasa Village and said, "Mr. Kaido said there are still remnants of the Kozuki clan here, so let's wipe them all out today." "That's right, Big Brother King." Jack wholeheartedly agreed with Big Brother King. These remnants of the Kozuki clan should all be completely eradicated to avoid affecting Lord Kaido's rule. At this time, the residents of Amigasa Village also came out one after another. When they saw the leader, the Flame Ear King and Jack the Drought, the three great figures of the Beast Pirates, they were all terrified. Several men dressed as samurai emerged from the crowd, the leader wearing a Tengu mask. Kozuki Sukiyaki's heart leapt into his throat when he saw Tama in the Flame Ear King's hand. Tama also spotted Tenguryama Hitetsu and excitedly waved her arms, saying, "Master." "Tama, rest assured, I will rescue you." Tenguryama Hitetsu, also known as Kozuki Sukiyaki, made up his mind that no matter what, he would find a way to rescue Tama from the Flame King's clutches. The Flame King's gaze locked onto Tenguryama Hitetsu, saying, "I found you, remnant of the Kozuki clan, Kozuki Sukiyaki." As soon as the Flame King finished speaking, the surrounding warriors immediately glared at Tenguryama Hitetsu with hatred. This foolish daimyo from the previous generation had passed the daimyo position to Kurozumi Orochi. Otherwise, Wano country wouldn't have fallen into this predicament. They were Kozuki Oden's retainers, so they naturally didn't know the secrets behind those events. Therefore, their hearts were filled with hatred for this former daimyo. Tama, unable to believe it, whispered, "Master, you are." He never knew that his master, Tenguryama Hitetsu, was none other than the previous daimyo Kozuki Sukiyaki. The surrounding warriors, who hated Kozuki Sukiyaki, dared not attack because of the presence of the Flame King and Jack the Drought, two powerful figures of the Beast Pirates. The Flame King approached Kozuki Sukiyaki step by step, questioning, "Kozuki Sukiyaki, you are a remnant of the Kozuki clan. I don't need to tell you. You should understand your fate." Kozuki Sukiyaki lowered his head slightly, his heart filled with resentment. He didn't know why his identity had been revealed, but now none of that mattered. What mattered was that his death would significantly reduce the Kozuki clan's chances of turning the tables in the future. King Yantai had no intention of wasting time talking nonsense with Kozuki Sukiyaki, and Mr. Kaido had already given him information about Kozuki Sukiyaki. So King Yantai continued to press him. "Kozuki Sukiyaki, hand over all 3 weapons Sandai Kidetsu, no Habakiri, and Enmin your possession. Otherwise, don't blame me for using extraordinary means." Kozuki Sukiyaki's eyes widened. He couldn't understand why he knew about those 3 weapons. It was simply unbelievable. Finally, Kozuki Sukiyaki sighed helplessly and replied, "I understand. I can give you those 3 weapons, but I have a condition." "Speak, what condition?" King Yantai didn't care what condition Kozuki Sukiyaki would propose, because whether he agreed or not rested entirely with him. Kozuki Sukiyaki stated his purpose directly. "If you release Tame and don't cause her any trouble in the future, I will give you those 3 weapons. We're taking Tama here not to make things difficult for him, but because Mr. Kaido specifically requested him to join our Beast Pirates." King Flame Ear didn't shy away from the topic just because there were many people present. Kozuki Sukiyaki was stunned. Kaido of the Beast Pirates specifically requested Tama to join the Beast Pirates. What kind of situation was this? The surrounding people also looked at Tama in King Flame Ear's hands in disbelief. After all, a little girl who could be singled out by Kaido of the Beast Pirates must have some extraordinary quality they didn't know about. Kozuki Sukiyaki saw that King Flame Air didn't seem to be lying, and there was no need to lie. After all, he was the second in command of the Beast Pirates. A short while later, Kozuki Sukiyaki handed King Flame Air the weapon Sandai Kidetsu, no Habakiri, and Enma. King, looking at the three weapons in his hands, couldn't help but praise them, saying, as expected of three Owazomo-level weapons. Jack, sensing King's gaze, understood implicitly and immediately adopted a fierce expression as he approached Kozuki Sukiyaki. Kozuki Sukiyaki, knowing his fate, silently closed his eyes. After dealing with Kozuki Sukiyaki, King Flame Air turned his gaze towards the mountaintop. Jack the Drought pointed in the direction of the mountain and said, "Brother King, that's the bandit gang's stronghold." That Maru is a very difficult opponent to deal with. I've fought him many times, and we've never been able to determine a winner. That Maru is considered the most skilled fighter under Kozuki Oden. It's normal that you couldn't capture him. King Flame Air understood why Jack couldn't capture Maru. A short while later, a burly man with red hair, lying on the back of a huge bull, stared in shock at the group of people who had appeared before him, especially the two leading figures. Maru said incredulously, "Flame Air King, Drought Jack, what wind blew you two to my side today? However, I will not join your 100 Beasts pirate crew. Forget that idea." Under normal circumstances, Maru wouldn't be so easygoing. The reason was that if it were just Drought Jack, Maru wouldn't be worried. But the problem was there was the even more powerful Flame Air King, so he had to think carefully. Jack rushed out, angrily shouting, "Brother King, leave this reckless Maru to me." At the same time, Drought Jack began to use his ancient Zoan model, Mammoth ability. Damn bastard, planning to use brute force. The resilient Maru also leapt up, charging towards Drought Jack. Boom! Bang! Jack the Drought and Maru instantly engaged in combat. Facing the powerful charging mammoth, Maru relentlessly swung his katana to block Jack the Drought's attacks and also seized opportunities to counterattack. Maru's subordinates followed suit, and the subordinates of the 100 Beasts pirate crew who had accompanied King and Jack also charged at the warriors. The two sides clashed in an instant, leaving only King, who was accompanied by Tama, still unmoved. Tama's eyes widened in disbelief as she watched Jack and Maru fight, exclaiming, "That's incredible. Is this what real combat is like?" Seeing such a fierce battle for the first time, Tama was utterly shocked. But King Inflamed Ears was wondering about something. Before they set off, Mr. Kaido hadn't intentionally discussed whether or not they wanted to take care of Maru. Just tell them the location of the remaining Wano pirates and their personnel, and let them handle it. Maru's strength is indeed very commendable. If he were willing to surrender, the overall strength of their 100 Beasts pirate crew could certainly increase. However, it seems the possibility of Maru joining their 100 Beasts pirate crew is extremely small. Mr. Kaido used to value talent highly, and Maru couldn't possibly have survived until now. Now, Mr. Kaido has ordered them to conduct a major purge within Wano, which means they should be slaughtering all these people. Queen and the Flying Five are also each carrying out their own cleanup operations. In that case, Flame King threw Tama aside and also gave her the three weapons he'd taken from Kozuki Sukiyaki. Tama was also very upset. He'd carried 3 weapons, and now he was just going to throw them away after carrying them for half a day. It was truly disgusting. The Flame King's actions also caught Maru's attention. With an even more powerful opponent nearby, Maru couldn't possibly ignore it. It seemed even the Flame King was about to join the attack. Sure enough, the next moment the Flame King charged at him. Disgusting, troublesome, facing to giants. Maru, having pushed back the Drought Jack with all his might, turned and began to flee. He wasn't stupid. Staying to fight was tantamount to suicide. Escaping might offer a glimmer of hope for survival. Seeing this, The Flame King used his ancient Zoan winged dragon form, flying into the air and immediately chasing after Shedinmaru, saying, "Shedinmaru, you won't escape today. Prepare to die." King Flame, having shed his winged dragon form, drew out his katana and relentlessly swung it at Shedinmaru. Clang, clang, clang. Facing King Flame's fierce attack, Shedinmaru had no choice but to retreat and block. Shedinmaru gritted his teeth and whispered, as expected of King Flame, the leader of the three calamities of the Beast Pirates, "His strength is truly formidable." Even having just fought King Flame, Shedinmaru could see that King Flame's strength was far superior to his own. Jack the Drought, having shed his model, mammoth form, drew out his sides and charged straight at Shedinmaru. He didn't believe Shedinmaru could withstand the combined attack of him and King for long. Jack the Drought also joined the assault. Shedinmaru's back was instantly ripped open by King, a large gash appearing, blood gushing out in an instant. Immediately afterwards, King kicked away the Tengu. King, with a mocking tone, said, "Shedinmaru, I should call you a Shiradoji. Stop here." Before Shedinmaru could even catch his breath, Jack the Drought's attack followed. Facing the combined attacks of King the Drought and Jack the Drought, Shedinmaru's injuries were visibly worsening at an alarming rate. At the same time, Denjiro, the mole beside Kurozumi Orochi, was also confronted by Queen. Using the alias Denjiro, he suspiciously questioned Queen, "What do you intend to do? Or are you saying your 100 Beasts pirate crew also intends to attack Lord Orochi?" "Haha, Lord Orochi, Kiyoshiro, Kozuki Oden's retainer, prepare to die." Queen, too lazy to waste words with Kiyoshiro, directly charged forward and launched her attack. "So my identity has been revealed. What's going on?" Without time to think much, Kiyoshiro relentlessly thwarted Queen's attacks. On this day, battles were raging in every corner of Wano country. Flying 5, along with the Beast Pirates headliners and their group, swept through Wano country. The people of Wano were all in a state of fear and anxiety, dreading that the Beast Pirates would also turn their swords against them. Wano country, flower capital. Black Maria appeared before Kozuki Hiyori, laughing mockingly as she said, "Komurasaki, the beauty of Wano country, no, I should call you Kozuki Hiyori." "Maria, how did you find out?" At this moment, Kozuki Hiyori finally understood. No wonder she had just received news of the Beast Pirates' large-scale operation. Unsurprisingly, they had all been exposed. Kozuki Hiyori couldn't understand why they had been exposed. They were clearly hiding in various places in Wano country. Black Maria continued, laughing, "How did we find out?" "Haha, of course. It was our Lord Kaido who found out. You remnants of the Kozuki clan will all be wiped out." Black Maria's words took a turn, and she continued, "But Kozuki Hiyori, you're relatively lucky to be here, because I intend to offer you to Lord Kaido." Upon hearing this, Kozuki Hiyori's face instantly darkened. Offer her to that monstrous Kaido of the 100 Beasts. He'd rather just choose to die. Just as Kozuki Hiyori was about to commit suicide, Black Maria lunged forward and chopped off his wrist. Immediately, Kozuki Hiyori fainted. Black Maria lifted Kozuki Hiyori and carried her out, intending to offer her to Lord Kaido. She believed Lord Kaido would be very pleased. As for jealousy, Black Maria had no such feelings. She only cared about how to please Lord Kaido. Meanwhile, at the Kurozumi Orochi Shogunate, the 9 members of the Imperial Guard all gathered at the Shogun's mansion, seated on either side of Kurozumi Orochi. Kurozumi Orochi's face was extremely grim and filled with fear. Fukurakyu, the captain of the Imperial Guard, spoke up. "The Beast Pirates are now purging the remaining members of the Kozuki clan under Kaido's orders. And the number of these remaining members has exceeded our expectations. No, I'm wondering why Kaido can accurately know the whereabouts of that idiot Kozuki Oden's remaining members." Kurozumi Orochi voiced his greatest fear. Did Kaido's large-scale attack mean he could strike at any moment? The entire Wano country was now in turmoil. Kurozumi Orochi, now the shogun of Wano, would be surprised if he wasn't afraid. He's used to wreaking havoc, but even he fears being dismissed by Kaido, the Beast King. Hanzo, a member of the Imperial Guard, spoke up. Lord Orochi, Kaido of the 100 Beasts has no reason to attack you. After all, Kaido of the 100 Beasts wants to control Wano, and he certainly can't do without you, Lord Orochi. Following Hanzo's suggestion, the other members of the Imperial Guard also agreed with his reasoning. Fukarakuyu stroked his beard and said, "That's right, Lord Orochi. You don't need to worry too much. Udon needs a large number of workers, and they also need us to provide personnel for Kaido of the 100 Beasts. Perhaps I'm worrying too much." Kurozumi Orochi wiped the sweat from his forehead. Hearing his subordinate's words, Kurozumi Orochi felt there was some truth to it. After all, Kaido of the 100 Beasts had no reason to attack him. They were in a cooperative relationship. Now that Kaido of the 100 Beasts is eliminating the remaining members of the Kozuki clan, Kurozumi Orochi himself would also want to take action against them. Since Kaido has sent people to deal with them, he should be happy. After thinking it through, Kurozumi Orochi's mood improved somewhat, no longer as anxious and wary as before. Fukarakuyu suggested, "Lord Orochi, we can observe him first." That's the only way. Kurozumi Orochi agreed with Fukarakuyu's suggestion, nodding slightly in response. The next day, all remaining members of the Kozuki clan in Wano were completely wiped out, but the people were still reeling from shock and fear. However, the Beast Pirates' large-scale operation was incredibly terrifying, with over 95% of homes being closed off, fearing that even a slight peek would attract their attention. Kurozumi Orochi spent a day in constant fear, thinking things would be all right. But then someone arrived at his headquarters, Kaido's secretary, the Emperor. Kurozumi Orochi's eyes widened, and he retorted, "You mean Kaido wants me to go to Onigashima to attend a conference?" "That's right, but General Orochi, you can refuse." "I wonder if Lord Kaido will be angry then." The Emperor replied with a smile, but his words were filled with a strong sense of threat. Kurozumi Orochi felt a chill run down his spine and mustered the courage to continue asking, "So, may I ask, what is the reason Kaido wants me to attend the conference?" General Orochi clearly knows the answer, but still asks. "Of course, it's to conduct a trial on Kozuki Oden's daughter," the Emperor replied with a smile. "What, Kozuki Oden's daughter?" Kurozumi Orochi hadn't expected that Kozuki Oden had a daughter hidden away in Wano. Thinking of this, Kurozumi Orochi felt a chill run down his spine. He said, "I understand. I'll prepare and leave immediately." After the Emperor left, Kurozumi Orochi finally couldn't help but ask Fukarakuyu, "Do you think I should go to Onigashima? After all, that's Kaido's headquarters. I'm afraid to go there." Kurozumi Orochi didn't continue, but his meaning was clear. Fukarakuyu thought for a moment and said, "Lord Orochi, Kaido has invited you. You must attend, no matter what. Kaido's reason is to judge Kozuki Oden's daughter. But the threat from the Kozuki clan to us hasn't been completely eliminated yet. So, I understand. You all come with me later." Not entirely at ease, Kurozumi Orochi prepared to bring all 9 members of his Imperial Guard along. At least this way he could feel a little more at ease. Onigashima Meeting Room. Kaido sat in the main seat, with the 3 calamities flying 5 robes to his right and Kurozumi Orochi and his Imperial Guard members to his left. Kurozumi Orochi was extremely anxious throughout the entire process, as these members of the Beast Pirates were all incredibly powerful, far beyond what he and his Imperial Guard could handle. 3 Beast Pirates henchmen carried a large chest and placed it in front of Kurozumi Orochi and his group. Kurozumi Orochi cautiously inquired, "Lord Kaido, may I ask what these are?" "Orochi, you'll know once you open it and see," Kaido replied, sitting comfortably on the main sofa with a half smile. Kurozumi Orochi had one of his subordinates open the chest. Seeing that it was filled with various human heads, he was so frightened that he threw it to the ground. his whole body trembling as he pointed, stammering, that, could it be? Could it be the heads of the remnants of the Kozuki clan? You're right, Orochi, Kaido replied, then added, so, Orochi, what do you think Wano country should do next? Hearing Kaido's words, Kurozumi Orochi almost cursed. How was he supposed to know how Wano country should develop next? Wasn't that something Kaido himself should be concerned about? Why was he asking him? Although Kurozumi Orochi was unhappy, he didn't dare contradict Kaido's questioning. He could only choose to change the subject, inquiring, Lord Kaido, you told me that Kozuki Oden's daughter was attending the conference. Could you let me see her? I'd really like to know who she is. Komurasaki, who was actually Kozuki Hiyori, was brought in by Black Maria's men. When Kurozumi Orochi saw that the person who arrived was Komurasaki, his face was filled with disbelief. He asked, how could it be you, Komurasaki? That's impossible. Faced with this reality, Kurozumi Orochi was momentarily unable to accept it because Komurasaki was the most beautiful woman in Wano and also the woman he wanted to capture. Now, reality confirmed that this woman was Kozuki Oden's daughter. If this were true, it wouldn't be impossible for Kurozumi Orochi to be assassinated one day. Thinking of this, Kurozumi Orochi couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. It was truly terrifying. Kurozumi Orochi hastily expressed his gratitude, saying, thank you so much, Lord Kaido. If it weren't for your intervention, I wouldn't have known that Wano country was hiding so many remnants of the Kozuki clan. Thinking about the remnants of the Kozuki clan and Komurasaki, Kozuki Oden's daughter, Kurozumi Orochi felt a constant chill run down his spine. It was fortunate that Kaido of the 100 Beasts had sent people to intervene. Otherwise, these people would have been a ticking time bomb, and no one knew when they would explode. Kozuki Hiyori tried to escape, but her body was restrained, making escape impossible. Especially after seeing Kurozumi Orochi, her eyes blazed with rage. She wished she could rush forward and kill him. At this moment, Kurozumi Orochi felt he had to show some respect, saying, Lord Kaido, if you hadn't intervened in time, these remnants of the Kozuki clan wouldn't have jumped out and caused trouble at any moment. Kaido didn't answer Kurozumi Orochi, but instead looked at him with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Kurozumi Orochi was also unsettled by Kaido's smile, unsure of what Kaido of the 100 Beasts meant. Kaido withdrew his gaze and said, all right, Orochi, have your subordinates leave. King will stay, and the rest of you will leave as well. Yes, Lord Kaido, Queen, Jack, and the others respectfully replied. Seeing this, Kurozumi Orochi didn't hesitate much and whispered to Fukurakuyu, you all leave too. Wait for me outside. All right, Lord Orochi, Fukurakuyu replied, then led his Imperial Guard and others out of the meeting room. Kozuki Hiyori was also taken out. Kurozumi Orochi cautiously inquired, Lord Kaido, why did you keep me here? What is it about? Before Kurozumi Orochi could answer Kaido, he heard a blood-curdling scream from outside. Kurozumi Orochi's eyes widened in disbelief as he glared at Kaido, questioning, Kaido, what do you intend to do? Do you intend to eliminate even me? Don't forget, without me, you wouldn't be able to ultimately control Wano country. At this moment, Kurozumi Orochi was terrified. The screams he'd just heard were the screams of his Imperial Guard members. The Flame King stood up and walked towards Kurozumi Orochi step by step. Kurozumi Orochi recoiled in fear. Kaido said coldly, Kurozumi Orochi, keeping you alive is the biggest obstacle to my rule over Wano country. Kaido, you're burning your bridges. Kurozumi Orochi roared angrily, kill me? It won't be that easy. Kurozumi Orochi's entire body began to expand, transforming into his Yamada no Orochi form, with 8 skulls flying around, one of which bore Kurozumi Orochi's face. The Flame King drew his katana, watching Kurozumi Orochi transform into Yamada no Orochi, and said, you're a mythical Zoan like Mr. Kaido, but your strength is far inferior, Kurozumi Orochi. The Flame King accelerated towards Kurozumi Orochi, rapidly swinging his katana. Even though Kurozumi Orochi desperately tried to block the Flame King's attack, he was relentlessly beheaded one after another. Knowing that losing all his heads would mean death, Kurozumi Orochi constantly pondered how he could escape, otherwise he would be brutally hacked to death. Kurozumi Orochi didn't want to die so unjustly. He was a shogun of Wano country. King Flame Ear cut off Kurozumi Orochi's escape route, warning him, "If I let you escape right under my nose, how can I possibly face Mr. Kaido?" Kaido sat in the main seat the entire time, watching King Flame Ear brutally attack Kurozumi Orochi. Speaking of King Flame Ear, as the second in command of the Beast Pirates, his strength was indeed immense, but he was still a bit short of the true top-tier level. As for the original story, King Flame Ear and Queen being dealt with by Ryakuju was simply because both were severely injured, and Ryakuju just reaped the benefits 10 days later. The entire Wano country regime was forcibly reformed by Kaido. There were no more shoguns, no more daimyo. All other systems were completely abolished by Kaido, leaving only Kaido as the king of the underworld. Anyone who dared to resist was directly suppressed or executed, transforming Wano into a true under Kaido's tyranny. The entire process was extremely bloody, but the effect was remarkably clear. Of course, Kaido also implemented many preferential policies. Indeed, everyone in Wano could eat their fill. Kaido understood the power of coercion and persuasion very well. After all, no matter how many major wars broke out in the future, internal conflicts within the headquarters could not be tolerated. That would be the most foolish thing to do. The Wano people, influenced by Kaido's preferential policies, far benefited from the situation under Kurozumi Orochi's rule. They supported whoever could provide them with enough food and a happy life, a very realistic principle. At the same time, Kaido also allowed Wano people to join the Beast Pirates. Anyone who considered themselves capable could choose not to join, as long as they were sufficiently and strong enough to naturally attain a certain status. After all, the warriors in Wano generally possessed some strength, and Kaido valued them considerably. At this moment, Kaido, along with the Flame King and Black Maria, arrived at the place where Yamato was imprisoned. When Kaido appeared before Yamato, he saw that she still wore the sea stone handcuffs on both hands. Yamato caught sight of Kaido and immediately roared angrily, "Kaido, what have you been doing to Wano lately? Why have so many people died?" "I'm carrying out reforms in Wano." "Wano used to be too rotten," Kaido replied calmly. Although Yamato was annoyed, he had to admit that, from what he'd heard, Wano's new policies were very friendly to all the people. However, what bothered Yamato was Kaido's excessive killing intent. So many people had died in this process. In Yamato's opinion, all that was needed was a proper education to stop them. Furthermore, Kaido's methods towards Kozuki Oden's retainers were extremely cruel. Even though Kozuki Oden had been dead for so many years, Kaido still hadn't let go of a single one. Kaido understood many things from Yamato's eyes. Behind her, Black Maria couldn't help but shake her head, inwardly thinking, why is Yamato, Lord Kaido's daughter, so clueless? As a ruler, one must eliminate all threats. Should one leave them alive only to one day rebel? Only someone with a saintly heart like Yamato would dare to think like that. With Yamato's personality, she's completely unsuitable to be a leader in the future. Just like that idiot Kozuki Oden, Kaido calmly inquired, "Yamato, tell me what your goal is. What is your dream?" "Of course, I want to become as great as Kozuki Oden. That's why I changed my name to Kozuki Oden, not Yamato, because in the future I want to establish Wano country." Yamato proudly declared that he wanted to become someone like Kozuki Oden in the future. Upon hearing this, King Flame and Black Maria both felt that Lord Kaido's daughter, Yamato, was extremely unfilial. How could she say such things in front of Lord Kaido? She clearly possessed all the resources of the Beast Pirates but didn't use them, instead constantly engaging in internal conflict. Kaido gestured for King Flame and Black Maria to be quiet. In truth, they didn't know that Yamato was the daughter of the former Beast Kaido, not his own daughter. Therefore, Kaido naturally wouldn't be overly concerned. As for what would happen to Yamato in the end, that was irrelevant to Kaido. What Kaido was currently contemplating was how to deal with Yamato, this ticking time bomb. If he didn't handle her, sooner or later this time bomb would inevitably explode. How to handle this immediately requires careful consideration of the method and approach. With such a reckless personality, going to sea will undoubtedly lead to numerous dangers. Throwing him out is the best option. Keeping him around will only make him a troublemaker. Yamato couldn't help but look at her father, Kaido, with fear. Now, Kaido gave her a very strange feeling. From Kaido's eyes, she couldn't see any concern for her or anger. He was incredibly calm. Furthermore, Kaido's appearance and height had changed, which were all things Yamato suspected. Kaido slowly said, "Yamato, haven't you always wanted to go to sea? I'm giving you this opportunity." "What? Really? You're not lying to me, are you, Kaido?" Yamato almost doubted she had heard correctly. Up until now, Kaido has kept him imprisoned, let alone allowing him to go out to sea or not. He couldn't even take half a step outside Onigashime. It's all thanks to heaven and earth. The current outcome was that Kaido had told him he agreed to let him go to sea. This was the most shocking and unique thing for Yamato. He didn't know why Kaido had changed so much. In fact, the Flame King and Black Maria were also very shocked. Lord Kaido would never have made this decision before, and they didn't know why he had made it now. This made the Flame King and Black Maria very suspicious. Yamato immediately pointed his finger at Kaido and said loudly, "Kaido, this is what you said. You're not allowed to regret it. This is what you said yourself." "I won't regret it," Kaido replied calmly. "Also, tomorrow I'm going out with King. You'll come with us. I'll drop you off halfway, and you'll go on your training alone." "Okay." Yamato felt this was an extraordinarily valuable event that should have made her very happy. So why did she suddenly feel a little unhappy? Behind her, Black Maria curiously inquired, "Lord Kaido, are you going out? Could you take me with you?" Kaido replied, "This time it's not for fun." "Fine." Black Maria reluctantly agreed. Early on Monday morning, the Flame Air King transformed into its Pteranodon form, and Kaido and Yamato rode on its back, flying out of Wano. Kaido's body was now smaller, so riding on the 6-meter-long Pteranodon Flame Air King's back didn't take up too much space. Initially, Kaido planned to find a random island in the New World and throw Yamato off there. However, Yamato said, "Kaido, I want to go to the first half of the Grand Line. There's Skypiea, recorded by Kozuki Oden, and I want to take a look." "As you wish." Kaido didn't care at all. He just wanted to throw Yamato out. Whether she lived or died was up to her own fate. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the Flame Air King had flown to the first half of the Grand Line, directly crossing the Red Line. While traversing the Red Line, the Flame Air King's inner turmoil was immense, though he concealed it, but it couldn't fool Kaido. Shortly after, in a small village, Kaido lifted Yamato and threw her to the shore. Looking at Yamato, Kaido said, "Yamato, you're free. Do whatever you want, but remember, from now on, you have nothing to do with me, okay?" "I understand," Yamato replied, pouting. Kaido, too lazy to argue further, said, "King, let's go." "All right, Mr. Kaido." The Flame Air King flapped her wings vigorously and flew away. Yamato watched Kaido and the Flame Air King disappear into the distance, her heart feeling somewhat empty, but she still excitedly exclaimed, "I'm finally free. This is great." Flying away from the small village on the island, Flame Air King inquired, "Mr. Kaido, are you really leaving Yamato outside?" Yamato chose this path herself, so even if she has to kneel, she will still go through with it. Now that he was Kaido, he certainly couldn't keep Yamato, a ticking time bomb, by his side. What if she stabbed him in the back someday? It wasn't impossible, and Kaido wouldn't let such a foolish thing happen. After hearing this, Flame Ear King didn't say anything more about the topic, so he changed the subject and asked, "So where are we going now, Mr. Kaido?" "East Sea." Kaido stated the purpose of his trip directly. Having come to this pirate world, he had to get Nami and Robin. Leaving them with that idiot Straw Hat was useless. Regarding Wano country, safety and internal issues have been thoroughly cleaned up, so Queen and the others currently in charge of management are more than sufficient. Even though they're all rough and tough bosses, if Nicole Robin were to come along later, the effect would probably be even more noticeable. King Inflamed Ears didn't know what Mr. Kaido wanted to do in the weakest of the four seas, the East Blue, but King Inflamed Ears knew there was no need to ask. He would naturally find out what he was doing once he got to the East Blue. Night slowly fell, and Kaido sat on Trinadon's back, closing his eyes to rest, continuously channeling his life force into his eyes. Kaido had a feeling that his Mangekyo Sharingan was about to transform into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Once the transformation was successful, he could take another step forward. Based on his current feeling, it would probably take a few days to complete the transformation. This situation was thanks to the powerful life energy brought about by Kaido's mythical Zoan Azure Dragon form. As for whether or not to kill Straw Hat Luffy sooner, Kaido fundamentally disdained doing such things. If he wanted to deal with someone, he'd only do it in his strongest form, like Straw Hat Luffy. That's what would be meaningful. All the famous forces on the vast ocean were unaware that Kaido, one of the four emperors of the New World, had led the second-in-command, King Flame, into the first half of the Grand Line. If they knew, especially the Marine headquarters, they would immediately become restless and jump up in alarm. After all, allowing a four emperor to enter the first half of the Grand Line and his destruction would be unimaginable. However, because the entire journey was by air, no one in the other forces received the news. Even within the Beast Pirates, they were unaware that Lord Kaido and King Flame had gone to the first half of the Grand Line. Only Black Maria and the Emperor knew, of course. The girls wouldn't be too talkative, so the Beast Pirates already knew that Lord Kaido had probably just gone out to commit suicide. After all, Lord Kaido often did things like that. The Flame King continued his all-out flight for another night, finally arriving in the East Blue. A day and a night of non-stop all-out flight had significantly depleted his energy, but for the Flame King, it wasn't a big deal. He was just slightly tired. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, Kaido and King landed on an uninhabited island and simply rested. King, eating grilled meat, said, "I've forgotten how long it's been since I've been so far from home." "Ha ha." "King, follow me. The future world will be even more exciting," Kaido replied. Also eating grilled meat, King firmly and unwaveringly stated, "Mr. Kaido, I have always been absolutely certain about that point." According to King, the only man who could become the Pirate King was Mr. Kaido, the man King recognized. He was destined to stand at the top of the world in the future. At this moment, Kaido's cell phone rang. Beep, beep, beep. Kaido answered, asking, "Moses, Moses, this is Kaido." "Lord Kaido, I've received inside information. Someone in the Whitebeard Pirates' 2nd Division has rebelled and killed the 4th Division's captain, Thatch." Secretary Bohong immediately reported this newly received information to Kaido. King Veemtai, upon hearing this, immediately exclaimed in shock, "The New World is about to be in turmoil. Unless Whitebeard can tolerate it, it's 100% certain to be chaotic." Kaido said to the cell phone, "I understand, Bohong. Continue doing your job and wait for my orders." "Yes, Lord Kaido," Bohong respectfully replied. After hanging up the phone, King Inflamed Ear hurriedly said, "Mr. Kaido, should we return to Wano immediately?" "No need to rush. It won't affect us." Knowing Kaido's original story, he also knew what would happen next, so he simply didn't care. At around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the village of Kokoyashi in the East Sea welcomed to uninvited guests. It was Kaido and the Flame King. The villagers of Kokoyashi, seeing the two strangers, whispered suspiciously, "Those two look strange, and one of them has flames burning behind him." As the village chief, Aegean had no choice but to stand up and inquire, "May I ask why you two are here in Kokoyashi village?" After all, those two didn't look like ordinary people, so Aegean felt it was necessary to be cautious. Kaido crossed his arms and said, "Nami, are you in Kokoyashi village?" "Don't worry, we're not here to cause him trouble." Aegean hesitated to mention that Nami had just returned, because he didn't know if those two were bad guys or not, and he also needed to figure out how to keep them calm. But before Kaido and King could even think of a reasonable excuse, a fisherman approached. Upon seeing Kaido and King, two strangers, he arrogantly said, "Oh, you two, since you've come to Kokoyashi village, then hand over the protection fee. After all, this is the territory of our Arlong Fishman pirate crew." Arlong Fishman pirate crew. Is that the pirate crew related to Jin, one of the 7 warlords of the sea? Upon hearing about the Fishman pirate crew, King immediately thought of Jin, the Blue Sea Knight. The fisherman, obviously not expecting them to know Jin, sneered, "Ha ha. I didn't expect you to know Jin. But unfortunately, our boss is Arlong, not Jin." But a second later, the fisherman was kicked flying by King Flame Ear, instantly sending him flying over 100 meters away, crashing into a rock with a loud bang. King's instantaneous attack terrified the villagers of Kokoyashi village. They never imagined that his speed and destructive power would be so astonishing. In an instant, he had kicked the fisherman so far away, and the destructive force was so great. Nami and Nojiko, hiding in the shadows, were also stunned. Nojiko quickly whispered, "Nami, run. Those two are looking for you. If you don't run quickly, you'll be in danger." "Wait a minute, I don't recognize those two." Nami couldn't understand why those two were targeting him. He clearly hadn't offended them in his memory. The commotion here dotted also brought the Fishman musician group inside Arlong's place. Arlong, accompanied by his officers, entered Kokoyashi village at the village gate. The Fishman Kurubi pointed his finger at Kaido and King, arrogantly saying, "You two really have a death wish, daring to cause trouble on our Arlong Fishman pirates' territory." Arlong's face was extremely grim at this moment. This was clearly a slap in the face right at his doorstep. He absolutely had to teach those two a harsh lesson. At this moment, Hachi the octopus, seeing their appearance, instantly looked terrified, saying, "Is that true? We're doomed. Arlong, let's quickly kneel and beg for forgiveness." "What? Hachi, are you crazy? Making me kneel and beg for forgiveness?" Arlong, almost dying of anger at Hachi's words, thought to himself, "The mighty fishman Arlong, making humans kneel and beg for forgiveness. Don't joke around." The other fishmen, equally furious, glared at Hachi. They hadn't even fought yet, and he was already kneeling before the enemy begging for forgiveness. This Hachi guy was simply a disgrace to their Arlong Fishman pirate crew. The villagers of Kokoyashi village, as well as Nami and Nojiko, were all wide-eyed. How could there be internal conflict within the Fishman pirate crew before any fighting had even begun? Hachi completely ignored his companions' roars and hurriedly explained, "Arlong, the opponent is the New World's 4 emperors, Kaido of the Beasts. He's in existence like an emperor ruling the New World." "What? The New World's 4 emperors, Kaido of the Beasts?" Arlong was instantly stunned, slowly turning his head to stare intently at the two people in front of him. Without time to think, Hachi quickly pulled out a stack of bounty posters and handed them to Arlong. Kaido, on the other hand, wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he watched the scene unfold, observing the fishmen, while the Flame King stood silently beside him. Arlong kept flipping through the bounty posters. When he came across the bounty posters for the 4 Emperor's Beast Pirates and saw the bounties on the 2 figures, his eyes widened and the posters fell to the ground. Kurubi picked up the posters and compared them, his eyes widening in disbelief. How is that possible? The four emperors beast pirates Kaido, with a bounty of 4.6 billion 11.1 million berry, and the other three great emperors Flame King, with a bounty of 1.3 billion 90 million berry. What kind of monsters are these? Arlong's bounty is only 20 million berry. After Kurubi's shocked exclamation, everyone else's eyes widened in astonishment. They had never heard of such an astronomical bounty. Normally, hearing a bounty exceeding 10 million berry was already terrifying, let alone one exceeding 1 billion. Even more so, a bounty of 4.6 billion or more. What kind of concept is that? The sheer amount of the bounty alone was enough to scare someone to death. Nami clutched her head, utterly despondent. Oh my God! Why am I being targeted by such a person? Help! At this moment, Nami felt like she was going insane. Being targeted by an Arlong with a 20 million berry bounty was already unbearable. Now, being targeted by a 4.6 billion berry monster, Nami felt like death was a distant hope. Nojiko also anxiously hugged Nami. The entire Fishman pirate crew trembled and recoiled in fear. Arlong was no exception, his legs shaking uncontrollably. But Arlong, unwilling to give up, angrily shouted, "You little brats, don't be intimidated by the bounty. Just deal with those two, and our Arlong pirate crew will be able to achieve complete fame and glory." Foolish! Upon hearing this, the Flame King felt that these fishmen, especially the one called Arlong, were utterly stupid. Arlong's foolish move resulted in a predictable outcome. In less than a minute, King slaughtered them all, with only Hachi the octopus escaping death. Kaido patted the terrified Hachi on the shoulder and said, "You're quite good. A wise man knows when to yield. Kneeling and begging for forgiveness isn't shameful. Thank you, Lord Kaido, for sparing my life." Hachi the octopus bowed 3 times to Kaido, expressing his gratitude for the pardon. After Hachi the octopus escaped, the villagers of Kokoyashi village were in a panic. The masked man who had just slaughtered the fishmen was truly terrifying. The normally invincible fishmen were like mere ants in front of him. Because she didn't want the villagers of Kokoyashi to be in danger, Nami proactively stood up and loudly said, "I know, the person you're looking for is me. I'm here now, and I'm willing to go with you. Please spare the villagers here. They are innocent." Nami! Nojiko, Ichan, and the other villagers all shouted Nami's name. Kaido raised his eyebrows and said, "Do I look like the kind of person who kills without batting an eye?" The Flame King, on the side, wanted to say, "Mr. Kaido, you are indeed that kind of person," but the Flame King certainly wouldn't ruin Mr. Kaido's reputation. Kaido pointed his finger at Ichan and commanded, "You, go arrange some good food and drink for us. I'll take Nami away early tomorrow morning. Tonight, you can all have a chat." "Yes, Lord Kaido." No one dared say no. Daring to say no was equivalent to putting the entire Kokoyashi village's life and death on the line. That night, Kaido and King sat together drinking. As for Nami, she was still trembling with fear. After all, she would be leaving with the 2 monsters early tomorrow morning. She didn't know what dangers she would face in the future. Everything was completely unknown. The main thing was that she had witnessed Arlong being killed by them in less than a single round. It was too terrifying. Nojiko patted Nami on the back, comforting her. "Nami, you've worked so hard for us, and as your older sister, I haven't been able to help you at all." At this moment, Nojiko felt extremely guilty because it was Nami who bore all the burden, and he had been left to reap the rewards of her success. Nojiko didn't want that. Ha ha! What nonsense are you talking about? Nojiko, aren't you doing just fine? Those monsters won't even bother you. I'm so envious of you. But now Kokoyashi village will finally be safe. Nami replied, feigning happiness. Nojiko shook her head and chuckled, saying, "You, Nami, your appearance is worrying." Meanwhile, the villagers of Kokoyashi village couldn't fall asleep. They were all terrified. As long as those 2 monsters didn't leave, there was no way to say they were safe. King, on the other hand, asked Mr. Kaido. Mr. Kaido, what is your purpose in insisting on bringing that woman along? To be honest, I don't see anything special about her. Navigation talent, world class, Kaido replied, taking a sip of his sake. King was stunned, saying, navigation talent, world class. To receive such a high praise from Mr. Kaido, it seems she truly has extraordinary qualities. As for Mr. Kaido's judgment, the Flame King never doubted it, because Mr. Kaido was a man he recognized, a man destined to stand at the pinnacle of the world in the future. Time slowly passed until the morning of the second day. That night, not a single villager in Kokoyashi village slept. They all stayed awake until dawn, and by morning, everyone basically had dark circles under their eyes. The Arlong Fishman pirate's ship was directly commandeered by Kaido, and the flag was, of course, taken down. Nami carried a large bag of luggage, and Kaido was quite speechless. How come women have so much stuff? He wondered what kind of things they were all packed. Nami stood at the bow of the ship, waving goodbye to Aegean, Nojiko, and the villagers. After all, once they left, they didn't know when they would see each other again. At that moment, Nojiko, seemingly out of nowhere, pushed a bag of luggage forward and ran towards the ship. Ashan watched Nojiko running, dumbfounded, and said, Nojiko, even you. Great! It's good to go out for a bit. After Nojiko jumped onto the ship, Nami exclaimed in shock, Nojiko, didn't you say last night you weren't going out to sea? Because I changed my mind at the last minute. Nojiko replied mischievously, then looked at Kaido and said, Lord Kaido, you won't be angry, will you? It doesn't matter. Kaido waved his hand. His only goal was Nami. Adding another Nojiko was just adding another Nojiko. It wouldn't have much of an impact. Actually, Nojiko's sudden change of mind was simply because she wanted to go along and see how exciting the outside world was. Hearing that Kaido was one of the 4 emperors of the New World, ruling the latter half of the Grand Line like an emperor, Nojiko naturally wanted to see for herself what kind of aura he possessed. It would also be a good opportunity to accompany Nami. At the same time, after leaving Kokoyashi village, Kaido used the fiery clouds to propel his ship 500 meters into the sky. This scene once again broadened the horizons of Nami and Nojiko, and in a short time, their vision improved at a speed visible to the naked eye. A short while later, 2 warships slowly approached from below on the sea. Nami recognized the soldiers on the ships and said worriedly, this is bad. That man is Colonel Mouse. He definitely wants to go to Kokoyashi village to find Arlong. Now that Arlong is dead, the villagers might be in danger. Kaido, who was resting with his eyes closed, said, King, go handle this. Yes, Mr. Kaido, King respectfully replied, then jumped onto the side of the ship. Nami and Nojiko were both shocked. King drew out his saber and relentlessly approached the warships below. At this moment, Colonel Mouse and his men on board also noticed King's figure. Colonel Mouse suspiciously asked, what's happening? Why is someone falling from above? Colonel, there's another ship floating even higher up. A naval soldier pointed to the sky and warned. Colonel Mouse was stunned. What day was it today? Why were there so many strange occurrences? When King descended to within about 100 meters, Fire Dragon Emperor. He first enveloped his samurai sword in flames, then unleashed a dragon-like flame through the blade. The scorching flame, like molten lava, shot towards the 2 warships. No way! Colonel Mouse and the naval soldiers were all terrified and bewildered. Boom, boom, when the Flame Dragon King swept over the 2 warships, Colonel Mouse and a group of soldiers had vanished into the vast ocean. The sea surface, still smoldering from the Flame Dragon King's attack, continued to rise. Nojiko, shocked, covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with disbelief, saying, that's incredible. 2 warships were destroyed in an instant. That's right. We've never witnessed such a display of power before. Nami also exclaimed, having considered herself knowledgeable after years of exploring the East Blue, only to find out she was actually just a frog in a well. At this moment, Nami cautiously approached Kaido and asked, "Lord Kaido, so where do we want to start now?" But Kaido didn't answer Nami, which only increased her anxiety and fear. Indeed, this beast Kaido was very difficult to get along with. Nojiko pulled Nami aside, signaling her not to disturb Kaido, because she suspected that Lord Kaido was deep in thought, completely in a state of relaxation. In fact, King Flame was also very suspicious. Before, Mr. Kaido was basically always drinking on the road, unlike now, where he rarely drank and had become much more cautious. At this moment, Kaido closed his eyes and said, "Let's find an island first to rest. I need a few days of quiet time." King, though puzzled, said nothing more. Kaido's reason for seeking out the island and spending a few days there was because he could clearly feel the vitality in his eyes growing stronger and stronger, as if they were about to break through and evolve into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. So he found a small model island nearby. Nami and Nojiko stayed on the boat, which also had plenty of food. Kaido went to the center of the island, sat in an empty spot, and had King guard the island. Kaido didn't want his evolution of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to be disturbed. Time slowly passed day by day, and Kaido continuously channeled his life force into his eyes. With the influx of life force, 5 days later, Kaido's Mangekyo Sharingan finally completely transformed into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. At the moment of evolving into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the cold aura around Kaido instantly intensified. The image of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, reflected in Kaido's eyes, appeared, and he whispered, "Is this the power of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan? My eyesight has increased exponentially. Even using the complete Susanoo this time is nothing. Furthermore, my left eye's purification jutsu has been renewed because of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, but my right eye's abilities remain unchanged. In that case, I should carefully consider how to utilize my left eye's abilities again." After speaking in a low voice, Kaido continued to sense the power emanating from the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in his eyes, analyzing, "In this world, the Sharingan can continuously evolve using life force. Moreover, judging from the current situation, relying solely on Kaido's current body's life force is simply insufficient to sustain further evolution to the Rinnegan. Considering the slow recovery of life force and the subsequent re-entry, I don't know how long it will take. It seems I need to think of another way. The life force required to advance from the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to the Rinnegan is increased thousands or even tens of thousands of times. However, in my memory, the future Marine Admiral Ryokyuju's Udo Nomi is a Logia-type fruit that can absorb life force from others. Although using the purification eye technique on someone like Ryokyuju is a bit wasteful, obtaining the Rinnegan requires a large amount of life force. So, Kaido finished his sentence in a low voice, having made his decision. If he could obtain the power of the Rinnegan, then Kaido would truly be at the pinnacle of the world. On the other hand, Ryokyuju's strength is also not bad. With just the transformation, his power could increase significantly. There's no other way. Who said the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan's evolution into the Rinnegan requires a massive amount of life force? Therefore, the target must be Ryokyuju, the future admiral. In the distance, the Flame King looked towards the center and said doubtfully, "Mr. Kaido's aura has become even colder." It's really strange. Mr. Kaido's recent changes are truly immense. Although the Flame King was puzzled, he would unconditionally support whatever Mr. Kaido decided. Kaido, wielding his spiked club, slowly emerged from the central island. When King Flame saw Kaido, he seemed to have a different feeling, saying, "Mr. Kaido, your strength has increased even more." "That's a very accurate feeling, King," Kaido replied. King Flame shook his head and smiled, saying, "That's mainly because Mr. Kaido just now unleashed an extremely cold aura, so I deduced that Mr. Kaido has definitely become much stronger." Kaido withdrew his gaze and said, "Let's go." When Kaido and King returned to the ship, Nami and Nojiko finally breathed a sigh of relief. They had been ordered to stay on the ship, and they were actually quite scared when they returned. The ship continued to fly under Kaido's control of the fiery clouds. Having acquired the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, it was clear that using its power was no longer as burdensome as with the regular Mangekyo Sharingan. Kaido took out his phone and dialed the Imperial Guard's number. Beep 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 mosey mosey, Lord Kaido, when will you be returning? The Imperial Guard secretary asked from the other end of the phone. Kaido directly answered the phone, saying, Imperial Guard, use our intelligence system to find a Logia-type Udo-Nomi user in this vast ocean. Once found, tell me their location. If necessary, contact the underground forces. As for the conditions, you can negotiate. Yes, Lord Kaido. On the other end of the phone, Bohong respectfully replied, although I don't know what Lord Kaido wants with that person named Aramaki, since Lord Kaido has given the order. I'll just follow it. Meanwhile, King inquired, Mr. Kaido, who exactly is this Aramaki you're talking about? A Logia-type user of the Udo-Nomi Devil Fruit, his strength, he should probably surpass yours. Kaido replied. King, the Flame Ear, was somewhat shocked. Mr. Kaido actually said that the Udo-Nomi Devil Fruit user's strength might surpass his. This made him very curious, and he said, Mr. Kaido, after we find that person, please allow me to have a sparring match with him. No problem. I also want to see who is stronger, you or him. Kaido replied with great interest. Anyway, in the original story, King and Queen were severely injured and easily dealt with by Ryakuju. The fact that King was completely unharmed, and to what extent he could fight Ryakuju, was what interested Kaido. At this moment, Kaido thought of the time in the original story when Hawkeye Mihawk arrived in the East Blue. He wanted to see the strength of the so-called world's greatest swordsman. Now, with the combination of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and the power of the 100 Beasts Kaido was confident he could defeat even Roger and Whitebeard at their peak. Kaido instructed, Nami, lead the way and find the Barati floating restaurant. The Barati floating restaurant? I know. Nami felt that she had finally come in handy. Since joining, Nami had repeatedly doubted whether he was just a pretty face, someone whose presence was neither essential nor particularly important. Meanwhile, King said, Mr. Kaido, you weren't as relaxed as you are now. Actually, King wanted to say that Mr. Kaido's usual demeanor had completely changed, but he swallowed the words before they came out. King didn't want to embarrass himself. Kaido looked at his capable assistant, King, and said, King, adjust your state. There's a formidable opponent. It's perfect for training. A formidable opponent, someone who can make you say that, Mr. Kaido, must be extraordinary. King realized that with Kaido's words, that opponent must be very powerful. At the same time, Flame King was also feeling restless and eager, as it had been a long time since he had fully unleashed his power in battle. Nami and Nojiko, listening from the side, were completely bewildered. Kaido also wanted Flame King to constantly experience high-intensity battles. Only through continuous high-intensity combat could his strength increase most rapidly. Otherwise, Flame King, having been the second in command of the Beast Pirates for so many years, had experienced fewer and fewer high-intensity battles. His strength was indeed considerable, but he hadn't yet reached his true peak. Not to mention reaching the Emperor level, he needed to at least advance further. Flame King understood Kaido's intention to let him hone his strength more. The floating restaurant Barati, 2,000 meters above the sea. A ship shrouded in fiery clouds floated in the air. From the ground, only a mass of fiery clouds could be seen. No boat was visible. Nami asked suspiciously, Lord Kaido, we've arrived at the Barati floating restaurant. Aren't we going to disembark? Kaido chuckled, hey, wait. The real show hasn't started yet. Once the show starts, we can go down later. This feeling was like a max-level player entering a beginner's village to farm items nothing but pure crushing. At the same time, inside the Barati floating restaurant, Straw Hat Luffy kept inviting Sanji. Sanji, join us? I already said, I won't join you guys. Sanji loudly refused. Zoro and Usopp, now also members of the Straw Hat Pirates, also laughed along. Their new captain being forced to stay here working was already humiliating enough. Luffy, the Straw Hat Pirates member, clenched his fists in frustration and said, "Sanji, I won't give up. I'll definitely make you join us." At that moment, a thin, frail man walked towards the restaurant's entrance. Sanji, seeing how pitiful he was, gave him a bowl of fried rice. This man was Jin. The plot then unfolded similarly to the original story. Jin brought his captain, Krieg. Krieg, having been hungry for several days, finally ate his fill and immediately turned hostile, declaring his intention to seize the Barati floating restaurant. The situation escalated, and Red-Footed Zeph had no choice but to step in to stabilize the situation. Right at the moment Krieg and the Barati floating restaurant clashed with the Straw Hat Pirates, an invisible slash cleaved the only remaining Krieg pirate's ship in two. A terrified pirate questioned, "Why, we've already lost our large fleet, and you still want to chase us all the way from the Grand Line to the East Blue?" "I was just bored to kill time." Hawkeye Mihawk, sitting on a small coffin-sized ship, casually replied. This statement from Hawkeye Mihawk instantly shattered the Krieg pirates. Hawkeye Mihawk was just killing time, and he had already destroyed them all. What were they then? After Zoro saw the newcomer's appearance, he widened his eyes in disbelief and said, "That guy is Hawkeye Mihawk." Krieg's face was extremely grim. His 50 pirate ships had been completely destroyed by the enemy, leaving him utterly unwilling to accept defeat. Jin hurriedly reminded him, "Captain Krieg, you shouldn't act rashly. We are no match for him." "What did you say, Jin?" Krieg felt his face lose all face after hearing Jin's words. Red-Footed Zeph exclaimed, "The so-called world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk, has actually come to the East Blue." "Hawkeye Mihawk, I remember that guy is one of the 7 warlords of the sea, right?" Sanji replied uncertainly. Zoro leapt onto the shattered deck, looked at Hawkeye Mihawk, and shouted, "Hawkeye Mihawk, let's have a swordsmanship duel." How pathetic for the weakling to blindly jump out without seeing the difference between himself and his opponent. Mihawk's figure flashed and he also arrived on the deck, confronting Zoro. In the air, Nami and Nojiko were both extremely puzzled. Nami inquired, "Lord Kaido, what exactly is happening down there? Why are you both staring down?" At 2,000 meters in the air, Nami and Nojiko couldn't see clearly what was happening. Kaido chuckled and asked, "King, how is your opponent?" "The world's greatest swordsman, Mihawk. Although we haven't fought before, he's certainly a very strong opponent." King, the Flame Ear, was seeing Mihawk for the first time. But judging from the aura emanating from Hawkeye Mihawk's upper body, Flame Ear King concluded that Hawkeye Mihawk was very strong. Kaido said, let's go meet that Hawkeye Mihawk once. Perhaps in a battle to the limit, your strength, King, might achieve a breakthrough. It seems my current strength is not up to par with you, Mr. Kaido. King unusually replied with a soft chuckle. Thus, under Kaido's control of the fiery clouds, the ship slowly descended. A ship approached from the sky and was quickly spotted, the first being Hawkeye Mihawk. Zoro, at this moment, had been knocked to the ground by Hawkeye Mihawk, his chest ripped open. Usopp hurriedly bandaged Zoro's wounds. Straw Hat Luffy, Krieg, Red-Footed Zeph, and the others all looked suspiciously towards the sky at a ship continuously approaching their small boat. Krieg said doubtfully, "What is that thing? Why can the ship only fly in the sky?" "It's unclear, but there must be people on it." Jin, on the side, also replied with doubt and uncertainty. Straw Hat Luffy's eyes lit up as he said, "That's amazing. The ship can fly in the sky?" When the ship landed on the sea, they all clearly saw the people on board, especially Red-Foot Zeph, whose eyes widened in disbelief and shock, saying, "Those two are." "Old man, who are those two?" Although Sanji was also attracted by the two beautiful women on the ship, the two men the old man was talking about were definitely not ordinary people. Otherwise, the old man wouldn't be so shocked. Red-Foot Zeph shook his head and said, "I didn't expect so many important figures to arrive here in just one day." Kaido and Hawkeye Mihawk's eyes locked on each other. Hawkeye Mihawk said neither quickly nor slowly, "New worlds for emperors. Beast Kaido, you've actually come to the East Blue." If the Marines knew, they'd probably be restless immediately. Who knows? Kaido's eyebrows arched, provocatively saying, "Hawkeye, show me your skills." Hearing this, Hawkeye Mihawk knew that Beast Kaido was targeting him. Hawkeye Mihawk held the Saiyuji Wisdom Uno Black Sword Yuru against his chest and said, "I've long wanted to experience the strength of Beast Kaido, one of the 4 emperors. Hawkeye, I'm the one who'll fight you." Kaido won't make the first move, Flame-Eared King stepped forward and said. Upon hearing the voice of the Flame-Eared King, Hawkeye Mihawk's gaze shifted from Kaido to the Flame-Eared King, saying, "You are the Beast Pirates, the leader of the 3 calamities." The Flame-Eared King, so that's it. At this moment, Krieg, who had been impatiently pointing his finger at Kaido and Hawkeye, angrily shouted, "You people completely disregard me, Krieg." Red-Footed Zeph whispered, "That fool, he's lucky to have survived, yet he jumps out to his death." The Flame-Eared King's figure instantly vanished, reappearing before Krieg, grabbing him by the neck and lifting him up. Jin, on the side, frantically rushed forward, shouting, "Disgusting! Release Captain Krieg!" Bang! Before Jin could even get close, he was kicked away by the Flame-Eared King, crashing heavily onto the deck. Jin suddenly spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood, lying on the ground completely unable to get up. Sanji said in disbelief, "That's amazing! Just one blow and Jin can't stand up." "Sanji, you'll see what top-level combat on the vast ocean is like later," Red-Footed Zeph reminded him. Flame King. A ball of fire erupted from the Flame King's hand, completely engulfing Krieg. Krieg screamed in agony, completely reduced to ashes by the King's flames. Krieg being reduced to ashes by King's flames terrified everyone present, except for Kaido and Hawkeye Mihawk. Hawkeye Mihawk's gaze shifted from King Flame to Kaido, thinking to himself that he had no idea how to deal with both of them simultaneously. Kaido found a place to sit and watch. King Flame slowly drew his katana, aiming it at Mihawk, and said, "The world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk, I wonder how your strength compares to Kaido's before he died." "Come on." Mihawk, likewise wielding his Saiyuji Wisdom Uno Black Sword Yoru, responded, aiming it at King Flame. He had initially thought his trip to the East Blue was just about meeting a very interesting young man. He hadn't expected to have such a satisfying battle. In truth, Hawkeye Mihawk really wanted to spar with Kaido, one of the 4 emperors, but since Kaido didn't intervene, Hawkeye Mihawk didn't insist. Sparring with this second-ranked individual wasn't a bad idea either. The flames behind King's back instantly intensified. His hands gripping the katana vanished in an instant, and the next moment, the crowd heard the sound of 2 weapons clashing. At this moment, the injured Zoro widened his eyes, intently watching the battle between Hawkeye Mihawk and Flame-Eared King. Johnny and Joseph, Zoro's 2 younger brothers, supported Zoro's body on either side. Johnny said incredulously, "That guy is really powerful." He managed to fight Hawkeye Mihawk without being at all outmatched. Joseph, on the other hand, dared not speak, fearing he would be too much of a blow to his older brother Zoro. Sanji lit a cigarette and exclaimed, "That's amazing." Even that green-haired guy couldn't do anything against Hawkeye Mihawk, but that masked man is suppressing him. That's terrifying. "You fool, your eyesight still needs improvement." Right now, Hawkeye Mihawk hasn't even counterattacked yet. Red-Footed Zeph, who had a much clearer understanding of the battle, reminded Sanji that he still didn't fully grasp the fight. After being reminded by the old man, Sanji paid even more attention to the battle because the speed at which Hawkeye Mihawk and Flame-Eared King fought was simply too fast, making it dizzying to watch. As for the chefs and Krieg's pirate crew members, they could only see the afterimages of the two, and as for how they attacked, they couldn't see at all. As the frequency of Mihawk and Flame-Eared King's exchanges increased, the ripples on the deck became more and more pronounced. This was the force of the intense battle. Nami, beside Kaido, asked in shock, Lord Kaido, do you think Flame Ear King can defeat Mihawk? No, Kaido replied directly. King might be able to fight Mihawk, but being able to fight doesn't mean he can defeat Mihawk. Nojiko smiled and said, "It's all right. We still have Lord Kaido here. No problem." The battle between Hawkeye Mihawk and Flame-Eared King was a complete eye-opener for Straw Hat Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Jin, revealing the true power of a battle between strong fighters. Zoro, in particular, realized that Mihawk hadn't shown even a hint of his real strength during their fight. This further strengthened Zoro's resolve to surpass Mihawk in the future. At that moment, a resounding clang echoed, bang. Flame-Eared King, gripping his katana, slammed it down on Mihawk's black sword, Yoru. Mihawk, however, didn't retreat a single step, standing firm as a mountain against Flame-Eared King's attack. Flame-Eared King questioned, "Hawkeye, you've been defending since the start of the fight. What's the meaning of this?" "I have no other intentions. I just wanted to see if you had the qualifications to fight me. Now it seems you do." Hawkeye Mihawk replied calmly. This instantly enraged Flame-Eared King, who retorted, "You really underestimated me, Hawkeye." Flame-Eared King leapt into the air, channeling the power of the flames behind him into his katana. Fire Dragon Emperor. A giant flame dragon formed from flames circled in the air. Its terrifying aura caused the onlookers to stare in astonishment. As King aimed his Fire Dragon Emperor at Hawkeye Mihawk, Hawkeye Mihawk also unleashed a cyan flying slash. Boom! The moment the two attacks collided, the entire surface of the sea shook violently. The floating restaurant on the Barati Sea was on the verge of capsizing, but only Straw Hat Luffy didn't feel any danger, laughing heartily and saying, "That's amazing. The battle can be this intense. It's truly eye-opening." Stupid Luffy, what do you mean eye-opening? We're watching from so close. Our situation is also very dangerous. Usopp, on the other hand, was practically on the verge of breaking down. According to Usopp, watching from such a close distance, he felt like he could lose his life at any moment. Jin stood there stunned, watching Hawkeye Mihawk and Flame-Eared King fight, saying, "Captain Krieg, it's unfair to lose. Their strength is far superior to ours." Even now, Jin still felt intense pain in his stomach. After being knocked away by the masked man, Jin felt like his stomach was about to burst. Following the devastating impact of the explosion, seawater was swept into the air, turning into a shower of raindrops. At the Barati floating restaurant, the tourists, who had already taken refuge in the cabins, were trembling with fear. Watching his attack being easily neutralized by Hawkeye Mihawk, King Flame-Ear muttered, "This Fire Dragon Emperor technique is, besides my strongest killing move, the most powerful technique." Yet it had no effect. A person who can become the world's greatest swordsman truly lives up to his reputation. Below, Hawkeye Mihawk swung his Sayuji Wisdom Ono black sword, Yoru, scattering the surrounding rainwater. Flame-Eared King once again landed on the deck, standing before Hawkeye Mihawk. Hawkeye Mihawk calmly said, "Flame-Eared King, leader of the three calamities, I acknowledge your strength. With such strength, why did you become one of the 7 warlords of the sea?" Flame-Eared King stared intently at Hawkeye Mihawk, retorting. Flame-Eared King could vaguely sense that Hawkeye Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, might be stronger than him, but certainly not as strong as Mr. Kaido, because Mr. Kaido was a man standing at the pinnacle of the world. Hawkeye Mihawk replied, "Regarding that question, I cannot answer. Let's continue the fight. Meeting an opponent like you gives me a long-awaited thrill." At this moment, the flames behind the Flame King slowly disappeared, and the next moment, the Flame King moved with even greater speed. Straw Hat Luffy's eyes widened in disbelief, saying, "That guy's speed has increased." Bang! Bang! The Flame King continuously launched a pincer attack on Hawkeye Mihawk. Because of his incredible speed, this pincer attack was possible. The Flame Kings of maximum speed also made Hawkeye Mihawk's perspective change even more, because the speed at which he swung his black sword Yoru was also incredibly fast. This long-awaited feeling was something Hawkeye Mihawk hadn't experienced in a long time. Hawkeye Mihawk had forgotten how long it had been since he'd felt such intense combat. The last time was during his duel with red-haired Shanks. Unbeknownst to him, many years had passed. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Hawkeye Mihawk's gaze became even more ferocious. He began to relentlessly initiate attacks. The battle between Flame Ear King and Hawkeye Mihawk instantly escalated to a new level. Jin, trembling with excitement, exclaimed, "Strong, too strong." Is this what true powerhouses are like on this vast ocean? In an instant, Straw Hat Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Jin, and the others, their vision no longer held high. After witnessing a real battle, they realized they were merely frogs in a well. With their current strength, entering the Grand Line and encountering such enemies, they wouldn't even know how they died. Flame Ear King and Hawkeye Mihawk continuously swung their swords. Bang! 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 The clashing of weapons resounded incessantly. However, due to the battlefield conditions, regardless of whether it was Flame Ear King or Hawkeye Mihawk, the range of their attacks was somewhat restrained. But even with this restraint, the destructive power of their attacks remained incredibly astonishing. Flame Ear King's attacks were no longer limited to swordsmanship. His fist and foot attacks also began to constantly supplement them. While counterattacking, Hawkeye Mihawk said, as expected of the second in command of the Beast Pirates, "Flame Ear King, your strength is quite good." "You're not bad either, Hawkeye. You were able to defend against all my attacks." Flame Ear King was truly impressed by Hawkeye Mihawk's strength. The fact that Mihawk could block all of his attacks like this was enough to prove that Hawkeye Mihawk's strength was not simple. However, being considered the world's greatest swordsman, his strength is certainly not something to be taken lightly. Zoro said without blinking, "It seems my swordsmanship is still far behind." "Zoro, I believe in you. In the future, you can become as powerful as them or even surpass them." Straw Hat Luffy stroked his straw hat and replied with a smile. Zoro also rarely showed a smile, saying, "That's for sure, because Michael is to be the world's greatest swordsman." Among everyone present, only Kaido could clearly perceive this battle. Because Kaido's strength was above that of King and Hawkeye Mihawk, their battle naturally couldn't escape Kaido's perception. After activating the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Kaido's Kenbun-Shoku Haki had improved, meaning his sensory abilities had increased. Suddenly, after a moment, Hawkeye Mihawk caught Flame-Eared King's attack off guard, and Yora's black sword instantly pierced Flame-Eared King's chest. King, with his chest pierced, let out a pained scream, his body continuously retreating several steps before he could barely regain his balance. Usopp said doubtfully, "Did Hawkeye Mihawk win?" No, that person called King wasn't injured. At this moment, Sanji pointed at Flame-Eared King's body and said, in the middle of the arena, Hawkeye Mihawk slowly raised his head and looked at Flame-Eared King, saying, "So that's it. Just now, when I was about to kill you, the flames behind you suddenly burst out." As a battle-hardened veteran, Hawkeye Mihawk could roughly analyze Flame-Eared King's specific abilities, after all, judging from Flame-Eared King's movements just now. After retracting the flames behind his back, his speed clearly increased by a factor of 10. So, suddenly, flames erupted again. Although it's unclear what happened, it's likely related to the fact that the Flame King wasn't injured after his attack landed on the Flame King's chest. The Flame King slowly recovered his normal posture, looking at Hawkeye Mihawk and saying, "Hawkeye, your analytical abilities are quite impressive." Straw Hat Luffy's eyes lit up with excitement as he said, "The fire-burning man wasn't injured after being struck. What an amazing physique." "Idiot, that guy's body must have some kind of special condition," Zoro retorted angrily, enduring the pain in his chest. Mihawk, glancing at the tattered deck beneath his feet, said, "If we continue fighting, these ship decks will definitely not last. Although I would love to continue fighting you, the situation doesn't allow it. Therefore, Flame King, let's settle this with one move." "That's exactly what I mean." Flame King agreed to Mihawk's suggestion, because even with careful restraint, the ship decks beneath his feet would soon crumble. Therefore, a decisive move was what Flame King desired. The Flame King stopped in midair, flames continuously erupting around his body. The terrifying flames, like volcanic projectiles, relentlessly poured into the vast ocean. This was the Flame King's intended most powerful move. As he brandished his saber, the surrounding flames converged, forming an enormous fire dragon. Fire Dragon Emperor. This enhanced version of the Fire Dragon Emperor unleashed an even larger fire dragon through his saber, significantly increasing its power. King also continuously incorporated more flames, further boosting the Fire Dragon Emperor's power. The scene, like a natural disaster, terrified everyone watching. They had never witnessed such a massive attack. This time, the Flame King unleashed his most powerful move without reservation. Seeing this, Kaido recalled that in the original story, King had also used this technique, but unfortunately, he was ultimately defeated by Zoro, who possessed Heishoku Haki. However, this didn't mean King's technique was weak. According to Kaido, King's technique was also extraordinarily powerful. A terrifyingly huge fire dragon coiled around the entire sky. Sanji's pupils contracted continuously as he said, "If this kind of attack lands, we'll all die under this attack. Don't worry, we should be able to escape." Zeph, on the other hand, was relatively calm, not panicking. Usopp was trembling with fear. The pirates of the Creek pirate crew were completely stunned. The enemy was incredibly powerful, far beyond their imagination. The deceased Creek captain was simply like a child facing a giant compared to the opponent. Zoro looked up at the sky, where the terrifying heat waves of the fire dragon were constantly erupting, and said, "Luffy, we are still a long way from becoming true powerhouses." I know, but we won't give up, right, Zoro?" Straw Hat Luffy's eyes were also filled with fighting spirit. Since deciding to become the Pirate King, Straw Hat Luffy knew that this path would be extremely difficult. Red-footed Zeph's side, the opponent is the second in command of the Beast Pirates, Flame King, and their captain is the one on that ship over there. Their strength is definitely even greater. The four emperors, the four who are considered the closest to the Pirate King's throne in the New World, you little brats must be under a lot of pressure. Straw Hat Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji all turned their gazes towards Kaido. Was that the four emperors who was closest to the Pirate King's throne? Hawkeye Mihawk kept his head held high, his clothes fluttering in the wind, showing no fear in the face of the Flame King's outburst. He silently gripped his Sayuji Wisdom Ono black sword, Yoru, in his hand, continuously infusing haki into the blade. Facing the Flame King's most powerful attack, even Hawkeye Mihawk dared not be careless and had to concentrate his mind to counter it. Especially this long-awaited battle made Hawkeye Mihawk feel unusually excited throughout. When the Flame King increased his power to its maximum limit, the Great Guardian Fire Dragon Emperor was surrounded by several other Fire Dragon Emperor giant dragons. At this moment, Flamebeard King also discovered that the haki emanating from Hawkeye Mihawk was indeed not as powerful as Hawkeye Mihawk's. Take this, Hawkeye Mihawk! Flame Air King controlled the Fire Dragon Emperor to charge towards Hawkeye Mihawk. Be careful, the opponent's attack is about to land. Red-footed Zeph hurriedly shouted a warning. If such a terrifying attack landed, whether this floating restaurant Barati would still survive was questionable, unless the opponent's attack dodged this place. Hawkeye Mihawk instantly took a few steps, leapt up and disappeared, appearing in front of the huge fire dragon's head gripping Sayuji Wazamono's black sword Yoru, and swung out an incredibly terrifying flying slash. When the two attackers' techniques clashed in an instant, the entire sky seemed to explode with flames. Boom! Because the entire sky was filled with several fire dragons, and after colliding with Mihawk's flying slashes, it continuously exploded. The scattered flames formed fireballs that rained down on the sea. At the same time, the ship below was inevitably also affected. Those below all widened their eyes, fearing they would be hit by these fireballs. However, the next moment, an invisible wave of energy swept through, deflecting the fireballs that were about to hit the ship, preventing the ship from being damaged. It was Kaido who, wielding his spiked club, created the energy wave that swept away all the falling fireballs, finally sending them all crashing into the sea. Straw Hat Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Jin, Red-Footed Zeph, and others all breathed a sigh of relief, thankful that Kaido had intervened. Otherwise, they might have been finished right there. Kaido ignored them, sweeping out a barrage of flamethrowers, his gaze still fixed on King and Hawkeye Mihawk's battle. Suddenly, Kaido's lips curled into a smile. In the air, after exchanging blows, King and Hawkeye Mihawk had already switched positions. King didn't turn around, directly questioning, "Hawkeye Mihawk, why did you suddenly hold back just now? Did you underestimate me?" "No, I just didn't want to stir up trouble." "Besides, your strength is very great, King," Hawkeye Mihawk replied calmly. Furthermore, Mihawk, the Hawkeye, genuinely didn't want to stir up trouble, mainly because he was worried about accidentally injuring the Flame-Eared King. Who knows if Kaido of the 100 Beasts would intervene? Mihawk's style of doing things wasn't about causing trouble. He would avoid unnecessary trouble if possible. Therefore, he reduced the intensity during the clash of their ultimate techniques. Otherwise, the current outcome wouldn't have been a draw. Moreover, he could have directly defeated the Flame-Eared King. After all, while the Flame-Eared King was powerful, he wasn't someone Mihawk truly valued. The person he truly valued was Kaido of the 100 Beasts. The Flame-Eared King sheathed his katana and said, "Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, I acknowledge your strength. It's very powerful." But apart from Kaido, the other spectators saw the final outcome as a draw. After all, their perspective hadn't reached a certain level, so they couldn't see when Hawkeye Mihawk finally held back his power. Finally, Hawkeye Mihawk glanced at Beast King Kaido without exchanging a word, and then mounted his coffin-shaped ship and left. After Hawkeye Mihawk left, the people on the Baratie floating restaurant realized that the danger was far from over. There were still two powerful monsters here. King Flame-Ear returned to Kaido's side and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Mr. Kaido. My strength is inferior to Hawkeye Mihawk's." Ha ha ha, Kaido laughed. "It's all right, after all. He's the world's greatest swordsman. You don't need to blame yourself. Just focus on increasing your Haki strength, and you can still advance further." Although King's Haki was also very strong, its intensity hadn't reached the true peak level. Once he broke through to the peak Haki level, then further advancement and entering the realm of Admiral-level combat power would be inevitable. "Yes, Mr. Kaido," King respectfully replied. Meanwhile, Nami and Nojiko were very suspicious. Nami whispered, "Weren't they evenly matched?" That's right, the fight was clearly a battle of wits and skill. Nojiko felt the same way. The two fighters were evenly matched, and it was impossible to tell who was stronger. Kaido didn't offer any explanation, and King also chose to remain silent. This left Nami and Nojiko extremely frustrated, but they had no way to help, as they didn't dare anger Kaido. At this moment, Jin finally mustered the courage to crawl and roll to Kaido's, kneeling on both knees and pleading, "Captain Kaido, my name is Jin. Please take me in. I am very weak now, but I will try my best to increase my strength and will absolutely not let you down." Jin moved, but it startled everyone watching. He actually dared to run up to the monster. However, Jin's courage also earned their admiration. At least he truly dared to directly confront the Yonko Kaido of the 100 Beasts pirates. Kaido looked at Jin, who was kneeling and pleading. Overall, if he possessed dual-colored Haki, he was considered a formidable fighter. So Kaido said, "All right, Jin, you can become one of the headliners of my 100 Beasts pirate crew." "Thank you, Captain Kaido." Jin's eyes welled up with tears upon hearing that Captain Kaido was willing to take him in. King, on the other hand, also looked at Jin. Although this man's current strength wasn't anything special, at least his background was quite good. Increased strength can also become a not-so-bad fighting force. Kaido slowly stood up, fiery clouds continuously erupting from the soles of his feet. Straw Hat Luffy watched Kaido intently, saying, "He looks so young, but this is what makes it interesting." Luffy's eyes blazed with fighting spirit as he shouted, "Kaido, I know you want to become the Pirate King. Let me tell you, the one who wants to become the Pirate King is me, Monkey D. Luffy." As soon as Luffy finished speaking, the entire arena fell silent. Usopp and Sanji quickly pulled Luffy aside, covering his mouth. Zoro, if he were seriously injured, would have joined in restraining Luffy as well. Usopp collapsed, saying, "Luffy, don't drag us down with you to our deaths." "That's right. What kind of captain are you?" Sanji also angrily yelled at Luffy, wanting to say, "Don't you know how strong the enemy is?" Just like that, you rudely blurted it out. Red-footed Zeph exclaimed in admiration of Straw Hat Luffy's courage. Straw Hat Luffy's eyes, unwavering, stared intently at Kaido. Flame-Mirrored King took a step forward, intending to draw his katana and teach this arrogant brat a lesson. However, Kaido stopped King with a hand, looking at Straw Hat Luffy and laughing. "Hey, you're very bold. Don't you know that acting like this without strength is very easy to lose your life? Or are you already prepared to die?" "I'm not afraid. Monkey D. Luffy, will definitely become the Pirate King in the future," Straw Hat Luffy retorted defiantly. Flame-Mirrored King asked for instructions again. "Mr. Kaido, let me go and kill that kid." "No need for that." Kaido waved his hand dismissively, saying, "You're called Monkey D. Luffy, right? If you want to challenge me, at least stand on the same level as me, understand, little brat?" "I understand," Straw Hat Luffy replied firmly. 2 minutes later, Kaido's ship, controlled by the fiery clouds, flew away. At the Baratie floating restaurant, Red-footed Zeph, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. They had almost been scared to death by Luffy's actions. Sanji, unusually relaxed, lit a cigarette and said, "The opponent is finally gone." "That's right. I thought I was going to die just now." Usopp chimed in. Red-footed Zeph stepped forward and said, "Little brats, especially Monkey D. Luffy, it's amazing that you survived. It's a miracle. But do you know what the concept of the 4 emperors of the New World is? With countless masters under his command and a vast, far-reaching power, even the Marine headquarters, when facing the 4 emperors, cannot help but be cautious. You must understand what kind of enemy you are facing. It can be said that anyone who wants to challenge a 4 emperor will not even meet the 4 emperors themselves before being eliminated by their subordinates." After Zeph's explanation, Sanji, Zoro, Usopp, and others finally understood the terrifying power of the 4 emperors. Although Straw Hat Luffy also knew the immense difficulty, that's just his personality. Once he's determined to do something, he'll pursue it to the end, even if it means death. On Kaido's side, King Flame asked suspiciously, "Mr. Kaido, why were you just now?" "King, do you think a bunch of little brats can shake my position?" Kaido retorted with a laugh. King immediately said seriously, "That's absolutely impossible. Even if you gave those little brats 100 years, they couldn't shake your position." There was another thing Kaido didn't say. He wasn't the Kaido he once was. Who knows what his future limits are? A tourist who had been at the Baratie floating restaurant, trembling inside, also fled the place. At this moment, he still had a hidden phone in his chest pocket, which he had secretly taken several photos of. After leaving the Baratie floating restaurant, he smiled and said, "If the photos I took today can be sold, then I can make a lot of money." More than an hour later, in the Marine headquarters Marineford, Marshal Sengoku looked at the document in his hand, his entire scalp tingling. The document contained news of Kaido, one of the 4 emperors of the New World, appearing in the East Blue, and also included images of the battle between King of the Flames and Mihawk. The Marine soldier who handed the document to the Marshal stood trembling. Sengoku, enraged, slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "You idiots! What kind of work are you doing? The New World's 4 emperors. Kaido and his three calamities leader, King Flame, have appeared in the East Blue, and you still need to rely on others to sell us intelligence just to get the news? Have you been too idle lately, unaware of the burden we Marines bear? Marshal Sengoku, I'm just delivering documents. I'm not in charge of these things. The Marine soldier cautiously replied. Sengoku's reaction only made him more furious. Look at this attitude. Does he not care about anything except his assigned duties? Sengoku slammed his hand on the table again, angrily shouting, Now summon all the vice admirals and above from headquarters to my office for a meeting. Yes, Marshal Sengoku. The Marine soldier hastily replied, then retreated, not daring to face Marshal Sengoku's wrath. Sengoku tapped his fingers on the table, suspiciously saying, Why did Kaido bring King to the East Blue? Why did he clash with Hawkeye Mihawk? Or is there some secret hidden in the East Blue that he doesn't want anyone to know? Sengoku had to consider all aspects and think carefully, precisely because he didn't know Kaido's purpose, which made him so worried. A Yonko Emperor taking his most capable subordinate to the East Blue, and the Marines hadn't received a single piece of intelligence, or had someone else sold them the information. The Marine headquarters had become a bunch of incompetent fools. Shortly afterwards, Vice Admiral Tsuru, Vice Admiral Garp, Admiral Kizaru, Admiral Aokiji. There were also several other lieutenant generals who went to Sengoku's meeting room. Akainu was at the G1 defense branch in the New World. As soon as Garp arrived, he started chattering, Sengoku, what's going on? Why did you call us all here so frantically? Is it a fight between the four emperors in the New World? Kizaru, Aokiji, and the others were also very curious. Unless something extremely urgent happened, Marshal Sengoku wouldn't be so anxious to call them all here. Unless something major had occurred, Marshal Sengoku wouldn't be so worried. As for what it was, they didn't know either. Sengoku looked at the fact that none of them knew the reason, and he was furious. They were truly incompetent. Was the Marine intelligence system really this bad? Sengoku, too lazy to waste words, directly handed the documents in his hand to the group to look at, saving himself the trouble of saying anything more. Kizaru, leading the way in shock, exclaimed, How terrifying, Kaido of the Beasts, a Yonko. He's actually appeared in the East Blue, and there's a battle between the Flame King and Hawkeye Mihawk, seemingly evenly matched. Is that true or false? That's too strange. In our records, the Flame King is no match for Hawkeye's strength. Aokiji also responded with great doubt. These few pictures were too suspicious. They were all images of the Flame King and Hawkeye Mihawk's final clash of their ultimate techniques. Therefore, even as admirals, they couldn't definitively judge the true outcome based on just a few pictures. The main point was still selling out the news to those with extremely poor skills. And finally, the Flame King and Hawkeye Mihawk were indeed evenly matched, so the deception was very strong. Anagumo said coldly, No matter what, we can't leave Kaido of the 100 Beasts in the Four Seas or the first half of the Grand Line. If anything happens, we won't be able to react in time. Garp, eating senbai, said suspiciously, I'm wondering, what is Kaido doing in the East Blue? Or is there some hidden reason behind the battle between the Flame King and Hawkeye Mihawk? Vice Admiral Tsuru glanced at the crowd and said, Of course, there's another possibility. That is, Kaido and his companions specifically sought out Hawkeye Mihawk. Otherwise, why would King Flame and Hawkeye Mihawk be fighting? This possibility, while unlikely, is not impossible. Vice Admiral Tsuru presented her analysis, and while some agreed, others held differing opinions. At this moment, Sengoku reminded them, also, our Navy's intelligence system needs improvement. The four emperors of the New World have all fled to the East Blue, and we haven't received any information yet. We're still relying on intelligence sold by others. Ha ha ha, Garp laughed mockingly. Did you hear that? Little brats, Sengoku said you're all too lazy. Instantly, everyone present turned pale, including Sengoku. This scoundrel Garp just likes to stand there and talk without feeling the pain. Sengoku, too lazy to talk nonsense, directly cut to the point, saying, "Since we know Kaido has appeared in the East Blue, no matter where he goes next, we can't just sit idly by. I'll go." Aokiji volunteered. Besides admirals, vice admirals are no longer qualified to handle missions involving the four emperors. Sengoku nodded slightly and said, we must also pay attention to safety. After all, we're facing the Yonko Kaido, and the other Flame King's strength shouldn't be underestimated. We should try to avoid fighting as much as possible. Safety first. If anything happens, call immediately. Furthermore, regarding the Flame King's bounty, it's been raised to 1.7 billion berry. Half a day later, in the Four Seas or the first half of the Grand Line, the future supernovas were still in existence. On a pirate ship, Drake looked at the latest issue of the newspaper and said, "The Beast Pirates." I didn't expect Beast Kaido and the leader of the three calamities, King Flame Calamity, to be acting together. The Navy certainly won't stand idly by. On the other side, Capone Beach smoked a cigar and said, "The four emperors clash with the seven warlords of the sea. Let's just get to the New World first." In a certain sea area, Hawkins laid out his cards and said, "I don't know why, but I can't see through fate." Appo, along with his subordinates, was on a small model island. At this time, Appo also saw the latest issue of the newspaper and said, "How strange. Why does Beast Kaido look so young?" Somewhere on the seabed, a submarine approached, and Beepo handed Law the latest newspapers. After reading them, Trafalgar Law said, "Mihawk the Hawkeye? Like Doflamingo, a warlord of the sea. What a nuisance." Meanwhile, the Kid Pirates were just about to enter the Grand Line. Kid and Killer were sitting together, and Kid asked Killer, "What do you think about this? Whether it's a warlord of the sea or a Yonko, they're not beings we can touch right now, especially the Yonko." Killer replied truthfully. Kid wasn't angry about this. After all, their current strength was still too weak, not enough to challenge those long-established figures. Kid threw the newspaper to the ground and said, "This is so annoying. The seven warlords of the sea are just government lackeys. Our target is the four emperors." "Yeah." Killer replied, "This was also their goal all along." The news about this incident was still spreading, and even though the Navy didn't want the situation to escalate like this, the intelligence was sold to them by someone else, and the person who sold it could have sold it to someone else. Therefore, the fact that this event spread throughout the world just shows how weak the Navy's control is. The four emperors have fled to the East Blue, and the Navy hasn't taken any action, as if they were blind. Alabasta. Standing beside the seven warlords of the sea, Crocodile, Nicole Robin inquired, "Boss, the Yonko Kaido has appeared in the East Blue. Should we be wary of anything?" Crocodile, puffing on his cigar, closed his eyes and said, "Kaido the Beast and that famous old man with the silver beard, they actually ran to the East Blue. The Marines are a bunch of incompetent fools. Never mind them. And tell those idiots under my command to be on high alert. I don't want to provoke Kaido." "All right, boss," Nicole Robin replied, then silently left Crocodile's room. Walking alone, Robin had a feeling that Kaido the Beast would set his sights on him. Daughter Island. Mrs. Nyan finished reading the latest newspaper, placed it on the table, and lay on her lounge chair, looking up at the sky, saying this shouldn't affect Hancock. The real headache should be the Marines. New World, Dressrosa Royal Palace. Treble chuckled and said, "Dofla, the world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk, is actually fighting King Flame Ear. That's really interesting, isn't it? Things aren't that simple. Kaido isn't the type to do something like that. Why would he bring King to the East Blue this time? There must be something fishy going on." Doflamingo, as Kaido's partner in the Beast Pirates, knew roughly what kind of person Kaido was. Therefore, Kaido bringing King Flame Ear to the East Blue and King Flame Ear fighting Mihawk was the reason behind it. The newspapers hadn't reported it, and he could only speculate on many things, but speculation certainly couldn't be an accurate answer. Treble continued, his suspicions rising. "Hey Dofla, do you think the Navy can send troops to capture Kaido? After all, Kaido has fled to the East Blue, and for the Navy, that could be an opportunity. Idiot, that's Kaido of the Beasts, and he's also accompanied by the Flame King. Both of them can fly. The Navy simply can't capture them. Doflamingo didn't take Treble's words seriously at all. If the Navy had the strength to capture Kaido of the Beasts, they would have done so long ago. Why would they wait until now? Currently, Doflamingo is simply curious about Kaido of the Beast's purpose in going to the East Blue. The fact that Kaido brought the Flame King with him means there's definitely something significant going on. Doflamingo isn't that foolish as to think this is just a simple matter. So Doflamingo instructed, Treble, you should investigate a little during the next round of transactions with the Beast Pirates. Remember not to intrude too deeply, otherwise it will be troublesome if you cause any misunderstandings. I understand, Dofla. Treble also knew the seriousness of the situation and didn't dare to be careless in his reply. Doflamingo took a sip of red wine and said in a low voice, All right, for now, let's just focus on what we can do. In truth, Doflamingo didn't want to risk provoking Kaido of the Beasts, as Kaido's strength was superior to his own. Now news had come that King Flame Ear could fight on equal footing with Mihawk, meaning Doflamingo himself couldn't defeat King Flame Ear either in the first half of the Grand Line. The terrifying thriller bark, the territory of the 7 warlords of the sea, Gecko Moria. At this moment, Gecko Moria's eyes were bloodshot with anger as he shouted, Kaido, that bastard Kaido of the Beasts. He even dared to come to the East Blue. Why didn't he just stay in the New World? Absalom said from the side, Lord Moria, do you really want to go seek revenge on Kaido of the Beasts now? Gecko Moria was stunned. Whether he could successfully take revenge on Kaido of the Beasts now, he himself didn't know. Gecko Moria thought that Kaido of the Beasts had brought the Flame King with him on this trip, and his 3 subordinates, Absalom, the strange Dr. Hogback, and Perona, were not true combat personnel. Only Absalom had a little bit of strength, but that strength was completely insignificant. Therefore, at this moment, Gecko Moria hesitated. Once he went to confront Kaido of the 100 Beasts, it would be a true life-or-death battle. Okay, Gecko Moria thought that his forces weren't yet fully assembled. He would wait until his zombie army was fully formed before launching an attack on Kaido of the 100 Beasts. He was certain he could completely defeat Kaido. Gecko Moria said, Let's temporarily spare Kaido of the 100 Beasts. We have more important things to do now, which is to create a sufficient zombie army. Yes, Lord Moria, Absalom respectfully replied. Perona then floated in from outside, saying, Lord Moria, I want to go out and play. Gecko Moria quickly waved his hand, signaling Perona to leave quickly, saying, Go, go, don't bother me. Okay, Lord Moria. Perona happily flew out. In the new world of the multiverse, on Cake Island, Big Mom Charlotte Lin Lin was eating cake bite by bite while listening to Prospero read the latest newspaper articles. After listening, Big Mom Charlotte Lin Lin was stunned and said, What? Kaido took King to the East Blue? What is Kaido doing in the East Blue? What could possibly be in that weakest sea area that Kaido would be interested in? Big Mom Charlotte Lin Lin was extremely confused. Kaido wouldn't go to the East Blue for no reason. There must be some reason. Without a reason, she wouldn't believe it. Kaido was a man who wouldn't get up early without a reason. How could Big Mom Charlotte Lin Lin not know that? Prospero curiously asked, Mom, what should we do now? What about Kaido and the Beast Pirates? Well, Big Mom Charlotte Lin Lin laughed heartily in response. It's nothing. I'll just ask Kaido directly when the time comes. It's rare for Kaido to be so lively now. Then Big Mom Charlotte Lin Lin took a big bite of cake and said, Also, pay close attention to the recent movements at sea. I feel something might be about to happen. Yes, Mom, Prospero respectfully replied. On a small island of the Red Hair Pirates, Lucky Roo, while eating barbecue, anxiously asked, Boss, Kaido has fled to the East Blue. Could he have hurt little Luffy? After all, I think I saw little Luffy's image in the newspapers. Even my son's image is there, Yasip replied, with a sniper rifle slung over his shoulder. Red-haired Shanks sat atop a log, gazing up at the sky, and asked Beckman, "What do you think about this?" First, Kaido probably wouldn't go and injure Luffy and his crew who just set sail, Beckman said, smoking a cigarette. If Kaido really did attack Luffy, then Kaido of the Beasts wouldn't deserve the title of Yonko. Shanks laughed heartily after hearing this. Haha, if Kaido of the Beasts really did that, we'll have to settle the score with him. Besides, we also need to investigate Kaido's purpose in going to the East Blue. After all, everything Kaido has done so far hasn't been anything good. That's right, boss, the other officers chimed in. At that moment, a young pirate, staggering and stumbling, ran up, frantically pointing behind his back and reporting, "Boss, it's bad. That Hawkeye Mihawk is coming." The red-hair pirates officers all looked up. This young pirate suddenly felt a figure appear behind him, fearfully turned around, and when he saw Hawkeye Mihawk behind him, he was so frightened that he scrambled to his feet and ran to stand behind red-haired Shanks. Red-haired Shanks laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, don't be afraid. Hawkeye Mihawk isn't here to fight. Come on. Hawkeye, this is about your affairs in the East Blue, and I also want to find out a little about it." Hawkeye Mihawk sat down beside red-haired Shanks and said, "You guys are really quite leisurely, coming all the way to this small island for tourists." Ha ha ha, red-haired Shanks laughed heartily and poured Hawkeye Mihawk a glass of wine. Mihawk, the hawk-eyed, was equally unreserved, directly gulping it down in large mouthfuls. At the same time, Hawkeye Mihawk knew what red-haired Shanks and his crew wanted to know, so he didn't hide anything and directly revealed everything he knew. After hearing this, the red-haired pirates officers breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that little Luffy was all right. They couldn't let him break his back the moment he set sail. At this point, Beckman became serious and asked, "Hawkeye, is that Flame-Eared King's strength really about the same as yours?" This question piqued the curiosity of the other members of the red-haired pirates, including red-haired Shanks. If the Flame-Eared King truly had similar strength to Hawkeye Mihawk, then they would have to pay even more attention to the Beast Pirates situation. Hawkeye Mihawk knew he would be asked this question and replied, "The Flame-Eared King's strength is not as good as mine." Mihawk simply replied that Flame-Eared King's strength was inferior to his and said little else. However, this reply from Mihawk was enough for the red-hair pirates officers. It showed that Flame-Eared King was not yet among the truly top-tier individuals.